Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First and foremost, I'll start by saying Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Samad, Alladhi lam yalid wa lam yulad, wa lam yakul lillahi kufuwan ahad, wa ashadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, wa ashadu anna Sayyidana Muhammad abduhu wa rasuluhu. My dear respected elders, brothers, sisters in Islam, I greet you with the universal greeting of peace once again, and I say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us an opportunity to grace this moment in time where we seek a way forward as a Muslim ummah. We thank our previous chair, who's the master of ceremonies, and then he did indicate that this ceremony will be having our brothers in the field of Islamic knowledge who will be sharing with us the experience and the status of the black alim in the townships. But before we go even into that sect, we have also amongst us an honorable member of our community. This honorable member, he hails from Uitenhage. In actual fact, before I even just touch on his biography, I need to mention that he had to be here and present yesterday in the beginning of the program. But due to some unforeseen circumstances, he couldn't make it yesterday. But we say, Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has enabled him to come through. So he will open for us, because if we are going to speak about we having gone and went and acquired knowledge, we need at least to have a footing of what the past looked like and what the present is and what the future will be. And to get that from an experienced person who's been there in the trenches from those days before the new dispensation, it is very important. He hails from the town of Uitenhage, better known in Xhosa as Etinach, and diocese in the Eastern Cape. He has been involved in many Muslim organizations, and amongst which the MYM. He was the first black African Muslim president, meaning our honorable brother Thandile Kona. This is his predecessor here. He is currently a lecturer at UKZN at the School of Religion, Philosophy and Classics. To try and read out his whole biography here will consume most of our time. So, ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome our honorable elder, Dr. Tāhir Sitoto. Jazakumullah.
Alhamdulillahi alladhi bi ni'mati tatimmu salihat. We begin with the name of Allah, the ever compassionate, the ever merciful, our sustainer, cherisher, and nourisher at all times. We greet you all with the greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I must first begin by thanking the chair for that gracious introduction, but also to indicate that when the organizers got in touch with me, they said that you have an open brief, so you can select to speak on any topic that you deem appropriate. And when I read about this morning's session, it is called Past, Present, and Future. For my particular presentation, I have selected the theme that is framed as Beyond Lament / Between Agency, Agency, and the Burden of History, Where to from here, Black Muslim. But before I get into the substance of my presentation, or meditations rather, I would like to acknowledge quite a number of familiar faces in the audience. But because of time, I cannot mention you all by name, but it is wonderful to be in your company. With me, of course, is also my wife, Ndileka Kamba. We all come from the Eastern Cape. So she has graciously agreed to accompany me this morning. Because the session was supposed to start at 8:30, we could not have breakfast. And so I was a bit panicking when the master of chairs for the entire session was taking a bit long. But I understand that it was a necessary exercise. It has also helped me to have a sense of the things that were covered yesterday. From where shall we begin? Where can we start? I want to start with a bit of an autobiographical note and say that when we greeted this year, I got to know about this conference through the social media. And because some of us are still part of the old school, we thought that maybe this is just a mischievous note doing the rounds. However, one soon noticed that there was a huge outcry, and we continued to be puzzled. Why the outcry? What's wrong? What's the matter? What's the fuss about? When a sector within the Muslim community says we need to organize a conference, there have been many conferences before. Why this one? Why is he raising such an outcry? Nevertheless, because this was doing rounds on the social media, and some of us are not always glued on our laptops and the WhatsApps and Facebook and Twitter and what have you, so maybe it's one of those messages. Let's just press the delete button and just ignored it. Just the delete button and ignored it. But because the outcry was so huge and loud, it became clear that this is not just a mischievous notice communication doing the rounds. And so on Sunday, March 17, 2019, my dear brother, Sheikh Zaid Langer, we finally got in touch. But prior to that, Brother Issa got in touch with me. And so I'm singling out these two brothers to say to you, I'm grateful to them, for if we did not have that conversation, brief as it was, perhaps I would not be standing before you this morning. As an African child, we are told that we must respect our ancestors, those that came before. And so when we began to see the communication doing rounds on the social media, we began to say and think, perhaps the stakeholders in the Black Muslim community, its ulama and clergy, have expelled us out of the fold as part of the problem. As part of the problem. Because it is fashionable nowadays within our midst, not within our micro setting, but within the macro setting, to blame the sins of the past and the present on those that came before. And therefore, it is fashionable nowadays to curse the ancestors. To curse the ancestors. We hear that Nelson Mandela, the first black president of a democratic South Africa, in a very lazy, narrow, limited narrative, is called a sellout and a traitor. That's lazy. Simplifying a complex narrative of our struggle to be free as a people of South Africa. I'm using that example to illustrate that it is easy, it is common, it is fashionable nowadays to blame those that came before for the sins of the past and the sins of the present. When I was struggling to collect my thoughts, I said, where shall we begin? Where shall we start? And hence I thought that the theme, agency, between agency, and the burden of history, where to from here, Black Muslim will best capture our predicament, your predicament, my predicament, as someone who belongs to that strange species within the black community, the Muslim other. The Muslim other. Muslim other in what sense? Or the African other, perhaps. Other in the sense that within his or her historical community, he or she is framed as someone who has committed cultural treason, who has turned his back on his past by accepting a foreign alien identity, who was trying to be something that she or he is not. Therefore, he's some kind of a cultural traitor, if you will. And within the community that he or she has come into, he continues to be the Muslim other. We heard from the chairperson earlier, who was making summary of yesterday, that there are even notions of someone who's been a Muslim for over 40 years and continue to be perceived as a new Muslim. And so when does one begin to become a Muslim, period? And so it becomes clear, or at least it has become clear to me, that we are also dealing here with a deep, profound, existential question of who am I? Who am I? Who am I? This species called Black Muslim. Many others have written about this and commented about this in specialized academic literature as well as popular literature. I will not burden you with that. Today I've decided to even depart from what is a neat prepared paper. And so those that ask me, what is your paper? Yes, I don't have a paper, because I thought that perhaps the paper might imprison me and not to meditate freely on what I think are the issues that we need to consider. It would seem to me that the imperative to call what others, I would think, have erroneously described as an exclusive conference, it stems from this sense of urgency. It's something that is long overdue. But also it speaks to questions and issues of agency. In other words, it says to us, and hence that's why we become very impatient when we sense a sense of lament in our deliberations, in our thoughts, in our reflections on why we are here. It would seem to suggest to me that South African Black Muslim Conference shaping Mzansi Muslim discourse is compelled by a sense of urgency, but also agency in the sense that the black Muslim, however framed, described, and defined, is saying we have to do for self. And so we have to stop lamenting about what should have been, what has not happened, why are we in this condition that we find ourselves in. It says, no, that's fine, but we need to move beyond that, beyond lament. But also, it would seem that we are also burdened by history. And perhaps that's where the past, in framing this session, comes in. It is true, as a student, when we detect some inaccuracies, we are duty bound to correct them. It is true that, yes, indeed, this is the first South African Black Muslim Conference to be organized by Black Muslims. Perhaps first in the aesthetic sense. Beautiful decor, beautiful room, first class sort of by Black African Muslim standards. Perhaps in the aesthetic sense, it is the first. But historically, it is not the first. I recall, with ears still wet, wearing nappies, figuratively speaking, of course. Some of us met in the early 1980s. We didn't meet in Church Street in this grand hotel, beautiful decor, nothing to apologize about, by the way. Nothing to apologize about. In fact, I'm proud that you've lifted the bar, set it very high. Nothing to apologize about that. However, we met in the early 80s in the backyard of Brother Ali Said Zange. I'm not sure if he's here or his children or grandchildren are present here. Brother Said Ali Zange, one of the prime movers for the mosque in Dlamini, amongst other pioneering brothers. I'm not sure of the internal politics within that community, but you cannot erase, delete, take out the name of Brother Ali Said Zange, amongst others, who ensured that the proper masjid is erected from the ground up, with a protruding minaret, claiming the sacred space of Soweto, that it is also okay to be Muslim within this space, so to speak. In that, what I would consider a historic meeting, or conference, if you will, depending your meaning of conference, there was also the late Imam Dawood Lobby from Langa in Cape Town, amongst others. And I'm proud to see what I believe is his grandson in this audience, Maulana Lobby. And there were many others. Some of them are still with us. Some of them are in the world beyond. And therefore, it would be improper to forget those that came before and the efforts and struggles and challenges that confronted them in trying to make sense of this very strange, complex identity. And so we are grateful and honored that some have picked up the baton, so to speak, and ensured that we move beyond lament and we respond to the historical demand. However, I want to say this in responding to the historical demand. We do not have, or you do not have, to justify yourself. Do not explain. Don't waste your energy, your time, and resources justifying why you are here. That's neither here or there. That's neither here nor there. We are here because of a sense of urgency. And the chairperson much earlier gave a glimpse of the challenges that confront this particular sector within the Ummah. I'm not going to get into the internal debates of whether should we have an exclusively black Muslim. That's neither here nor there. That's neither here nor there. The existential questions that confront someone who is defined as black African Muslim might be slightly different, or maybe fundamentally different from those who have the honor and privilege of being known as the historical traditional Muslim communities. They don't have to deal with the questions that the Darul Ulooms, Maulana and Sheikh, that the Darul Ulooms that we have studied in, with due respect to those Darul Ulooms, the Darul Ulooms, whether it is Al-Azhar for that matter, whether it is Medina, whether it is Islamabad, whether it is Qum too in Tehran in Iran, Qum, right, in Iran, those esteemed universal places of Islamic learning have not prepared you, at least I believe in my own sense, have not prepared us to deal with the kinds of unique questions that confront someone who is called black African and Muslim, who comes from a parentage that might not be historically Muslim. For someone who might be raised by Methodist grandparents and taught to recite, "Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name," to recite that prayer every evening. Someone who's raised singing the hymn, "Lizali Sidi Galako, Titonko siye nyaniso, zonkinhlangaza izwe." Thank you. I'm told the time is up. I'm told the time is up, but you get the point. You get the point. The Darul Uloom, the madrasa, has not prepared you for the theological anxiety. Theological anxiety that says, can you really sing these hymns? They are not Islamic hymns, after all. If you fall in love, I know time is up, just 2 minutes, I'll conclude with this note. If you fall in love and you marry someone who is historically, I'm just figuratively speaking, who does not come from the same faith tradition, all right? And then with all the Islamic demands and dictates, can the nikah be done in the Muslim fashion as well, in the fashion of the other tradition? What does Darul Uloom say? What does Qum say? What does Al-Azhar say about those sorts of questions? And so these are unique questions that confront the being that is called Black, African, and Muslim. And therefore, amongst other things, beyond structural issues of being entrepreneurs, of having structures, functioning masjids and madrasas, there are also these deep existential questions that no one else but you and me can address and deal with. And that is not being exclusive. It is simply dealing with issues that concern us as a people. With that note, I want to conclude. Assalamu alaikum.